Alright, recap. So, let's start with Thunderbreak Regent Draconic Roar. So Draconic Roar, pretty good. You know, if it was just Searing Blaze all the time, it would have been great. But it wasn't. And I think that is a problem. Thunderbreak Regent was okay. I was not super impressed by it, and honestly, the best part about it was the 3 damage if they target it. So that leads me to believe that just something with a come into play effect is probably better. So I think Thought-Knot's here probably just better. Matter Shaper, embarrassing. Just every deck that tries to put creatures on the ground is going to play Reflector Mage. And normally in the matchups where something like Matter Shaper would be good, would be like in matchups where, say, Kitchen Finks would be good, where you want to trade, you want to block, you want your opponent to try to kill it. But when they're just bouncing it, and then you can't even replay it the next turn, that is a disaster. And that is not something this deck can actually afford to do. So, in place of Matter Shaper, Thunderbreak Regent, I don't actually think we want Thought-Knots here at all. So instead of those 8, I think we should actually just move, either towards a Nahiri shell, where Nahiri gives us ways to interact with, larger creatures, enchantments like Always Watching, or just, tick up for value and start discarding stuff like Fiery Temper. So if we eliminate these 12, we get 4 Nahiri, 4 Axe, 4 Temper, and that could just be, the shell for a red-white deck, and then we change the mana. Basically, we cut Chivalry for Battlefield Forge, Haven for, or Haven and some Mountains for the Needle Spires slash Stone Quarry, I think that was what it's called. I do like Mage Ring Network, though. I thought that card, we didn't actually get to see a lot of it because we didn't draw very much, and we drew it instead of colored mana a couple times. But if we're removing Haven of the Spirit Dragon and getting rid of a lot of our, colorless element, especially from the main deck, I think that's fine. I think there's probably a version of this deck that plays like 4 Majoring Networks and like 4 copies of Burn From Within on top of the 2 copies of Fall of the Titan, because Burn From Within it's just Fireball, and when you have a charge land, Fireball is fine. And I don't think that's something people have really explored that much in this format, and if you're playing a Goggles deck, you do want ways to close the game, and sometimes Fall of the Titan isn't enough. I actually think Fall of the Titans is pretty good in blue-red because you have access to stuff like Jace, early things you can play where your opponent doesn't have to have a creature in play, where you can turn on Surge very easily, and even though Surge won't always start with a 1 casting cost spell, being able to play for a 2 casting cost spell can be the difference between winning and losing a game when you're trying to fork it with Pyromancer's Goggles, because every extra mana you have to spend on the spell to turn on Surge is just taking away 2 damage per extra mana with Pyromancer's Fall of the Titan. But with Burn From Within, you don't need to go through any hoops. But I do think Fall of the Titan is good enough to just keep playing that in a higher number than Burn From Within for right now, simply because of how good it is just to naturally cast. Surging early on to kill 2 creatures is pretty big against a lot of these like Collected Company decks. We didn't see it come up too much because we just got rolled by them. And honestly, I have no idea what to do about that Cryptolith's Right deck, man. That deck looks great. And a lot of people played at the Grand Prix last weekend, or not a lot, but a lot of big name players did, and they did fairly well. I know Seth Manfield, the reigning world champion, top-aided Pro Tour, Shadows over Innistrad, made top 4 with his Esper Planeswalker deck, and I have not heard a single person who thought the Esper deck was good. And that's weird, when someone is that scary good at Magic, where they can play a deck that everyone thinks is just kind of bad and just makes top 4 of the Pro Tour with it. That's impressive. And I saw Seth go 12-3 at the Grand Prix, and he was on camera and he was making some minor gameplay mistakes, I would call them, and people, they like to cry wolf about cheating and all that other stuff, but with a deck that makes like 14,000 tokens, has Cryptolith Rights in it, and you try to keep track of what all creatures have summoning sickness and which don't, and when you're 14 1,000 miles ahead of your opponent on board, hand, life total number of cards, etc., I think it's that kind of stuff is forgivable, but that's a time, for a different time and place. Anyway, I do think the 4 color Crypto with Rise deck is great. I think that this deck is mediocre at best, but I do like the idea of the things we were trying, and I think um, Draconic Roar is good. It does a lot of stuff that we needed to do. It kills a lot of 3 toughness creatures that are in the format and that are kind of prevalent in these Collected Company decks. That it's sometimes kind of hard to turn on the Fire Impulses early in the game, so Sylvan Advocate can be troublesome. Kozilek's Return doesn't always kill what you need it to kill, so killing stuff with 3 toughness, it just gets more and more important, as time goes on. So, I don't know. I do think the deck needs a couple of ways to interact with Planeswalkers, and I'm not really sure how to do that just yet. If we splash white, we could get access to Quarantine Field. I don't know. I got nothing. We're gonna keep smashing our head against the wall, pun intended, with Reality Smasher, just to try to see if we can come up with a way to interact with Gideons and Nissas a little bit more easily, while also not making us super vulnerable to the Reflector Mage decks. So yeah, or we might just jump on this 4-color, Crypto Thrice decks that just smash me twice. Anyway, guys, that's all for me this week. Thanks for watching. I'm Todd Anderson for StarCityGames.com, and we'll see you next week.